Hello, welcome to Join Caucus. My name is Evans Mensah. It grabbed the headlines this week from Wednesday. 10 people died. So far, that's what we know. 75 have been rescued. And as of 10 minutes ago, we learned that they have discovered that there might be more individuals buried under the rubble. I'm talking about that disaster that happened on Wednesday at that Malcolm building that collapsed, leading to the loss of lives, a tragedy that the nation has so far been plunged into. A lot has been said about how the rescue effort is proceeding. A lot has been said about the political parties and how they are approaching this disaster. And if you didn't know, I just want to remind you that all the political parties called off their campaigns. I'm talking about the four main political parties, the NDC, the NPP, the PNC, and the CPP, as we mourn the lives lost, also as the country comes together to ensure that we can indeed try and find more people trapped underneath the rubble. Tonight we'll be looking at that from the perspective of the NDC and the NPP here on Join Caucus. Also tonight, we will be looking at the IEA vice presidential debate. It was billed to be a tussle between the two giants, the NPP and the NDC, as against the little ones, if you may, the PNC and the CPP. Actually, some also said it was a battle of the sexes, the men against the women. Who came up on top and who won that debate? We'll get a partisan view on that subject later on here on Join Caucus. With me to look at the issues, Victor Kwejoga Adawuda, lawyer and member of the NDC communications team and also member of the legal team. Also with me, Salam Mustafa is an MPP communications team member. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The nation has been through some difficult times in the past 3 days since Wednesday. I'm sure you heard about it. Where were you when you heard it? I was driving when I heard the news about the collapse of the building, and I thought maybe it was this one-story building or some ground floor that had caved in or so. Then later you got to know that it was 5-story and it is a shopping center. Where were you when you heard it, and what was the feeling that struck you?
I was actually in Sunyani. I had traveled and I heard the news that the Malcolm, the story building, it's a 6-story building, 6-story has collapsed. And, you know, I was taken aback. I was amazed. I was like, the next thing I did was that, God, let these lives be valued. You know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that something like this would happen. This is not an act of God. It's a shared negligence. And my heart goes to the families that lost their relations and the nation as a whole. I think when it comes to issues like this, we come together as Ghanaians and we see ourselves as the same people with common destiny. And sometimes when I look at the pictures, it tells me that we have a long way to go. A lot of things has to change. The way we do things, there should be attitudinal change. And my condolences. I think the nation is mourning, and we will have to do the best and give befitting burial to the lost or departed souls. I believe that the Israelis has also done well, because you could see that when they came, more people were being brought out from the debris. I think that it's still continuing.
Yeah,
and I think
it's
they
going to continue
believe
throughout the night.
Yeah, throughout the night.
Because they suspect there might be more lives down there. And hopefully, they are hoping to get people out alive.
Yeah. One of the issues I believe that they believe so is that the sniffer dogs and the other things that they brought had been able to help, because I couldn't really see what sniffer dogs we had that we were not able to detect and sniff and see exactly what was happening.
Let me share a pretty fascinating story, one of the good news stories. In such circumstances, you hear a lot of bad news, but today we had this fascinating good news story. A lady who was trapped underneath the rubble happens to find that her phone was still on her. She was deep down there, and calls the ex-boyfriend on the phone and basically was telling him, I'm here, I was here when the building collapsed. Get to the scene, give your phone to the rescuer so that they can locate where I was or where she is now. The ex-boyfriend got to the scene. Of course, you can imagine, pretty traumatized. Gave the phone to the rescuers, and they started talking to the lady wherever she was. She was underneath the rubble. Then she indicated to them that she was in a particular part of the building when the thing collapsed. And so they found the Melcom officials who basically knew where that department was, and they started looking for her. Just then, the line dropped, and they would not be able to establish contact. But coming on there, I was speaking to the Deputy Information Minister, who was saying that there's a lady they know is still alive because the dogs have sniffed, and the equipment have indicated there's life there. Also, 4 more bodies, we are told, are stuck in an elevator. They are hoping that they will get them. Those are the kind of news stories that you hear in the midst of that tragedy. I want to bring you in, Salam Mustafa. You heard it as well. Where were you when you heard it, and how did it strike you?
Actually, I had just gotten into the office when there was news about a caved-in building. I didn't pay much attention till I got on the social media, Facebook, and people were talking about it. And when the pictures began springing up, it was gory. That was when I realized that it was such
you
a
saw
serious...
limbs sticking out, body parts.
Body parts, crushed human, bodies, and I was like, goodness, we are struck by a disaster. That's how I got it. I was hit, hard hit when I saw the carnage that has been visited upon us as a people. But I bemoan our attitude as a nation.
And that's where I was going to move the conversation to, because once you've talked about the sympathies that we have for the people who've lost, we're consoling them, and etc., the next logical step is to now start talking about why this happened, how can we stop it from happening again. I've heard the president talk quite forcefully about negligence, and we know that people have been picked up. People are still being questioned, including the owner of the building and an AMA official. Today we had the Alfred van der Poel talking about the fact that, well, I wasn't there, so don't blame me. What do you make of how this thing has been handled?
In a very developed democracies, I think that things of this nature, there is an absolute responsibility that is taken by somebody, leadership or somebody. That I think this is something that is coming from our outfit, and if there was supervision and monitoring, it could have not have happened. I don't think it is time to shift blames and say that I wasn't there, this wasn't there. I think the best we need to do now is for leadership to make sure they get to the logical conclusion of this. I always sometimes ask myself, if the person is even fired, or let's say the person at the top is fired, is that all? Is that the solution? It goes to give confidence that if you don't do the right thing, you will be fired. But I also have a second view, in a sense that if the people are picked up, they are questioned in a very, not a hostile environment, then you can find out what is the modus, what happens there. They will be comfortable to tell you that this is normally what happens, this is the problems, that we will find the loopholes that we can seal it. I think this is what we need to do. One of the biggest problems, I would say, is that yes, we have our regulatory institution. We have people who are hired and they are being paid. But what is the problem do they have? It's somebody listening to the problems. There could be negligence. It's an issue of negligence. It's an issue of negligence. But what is the problem? What permeates? What happens there? Those are things that we need to look at. And let's crack the whip.
What do you make? What do you make of the way the thing has been handled so far? Do you think that we are moving too fast in raising all these questions about whose responsibility was it to check, to make sure this building did not even come up? And if it did come up, what responsibility was it to inspect, to follow up? All those questions. You think it's maybe too early to ask?
Probably too early to ask, because we are not sure yet whether we have been able to get everybody rescued, those that are caught, under the rubble. So probably we would have to check and see if we can still rescue a lot more people. Then we would push harder the questions that you have just popped up. They are very, very necessary and legitimate questions that you have brought up. And as a nation, this should not go as one of the normal things that happens and it goes.
That's a fear, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, this
it
is the first time we'll talk about it.
This is not the first time we're having a building.
2 weeks, 3 weeks,
coming
we'll
down.
forget about it. We'll all go back to our normal lives.
The president
life goes on.
Was there and has caused for investigations. I hope there is not going to be a mere rhetoric, that this will be forcefully enforced, such that we get to the bottom of the issue. Other than that, we are going to continue to suffer from these kind of carnages, because I'm sure not just that particular building, but there are similar structures that are faulty standing different parts of this nation.
As a matter of fact, in the same vicinity, the guy who owns this building apparently has some other structures close by. Today, the AMA boss was saying they've secured an order to basically stop anybody from occupying those buildings. They have businesses, banks, etc., and then they've evicted all of them, evacuated them. They're giving the man who owns it some time to come and prove that he has the permits, or else they're going to pull it down.
Yeah, with this particular issue, initially it came that he didn't have a permit. Then I understand today he
claims he has a permit. The AMA board still says he doesn't have a permit.
So we don't even know what the truth is. There's a confusion. But even moving beyond that, how was the construction done? Who were the contractors? Did they follow the building regulations? Did they use the appropriate materials in building the structure? If not, this is manslaughter. Everybody who is responsible and
using legal terms, we have a lawyer here. Be very, very careful. Be very, very careful.
But this is manslaughter. Okay, if there's some, any modicum of negligence, and this is manslaughter. And as a nation, this is not something we should joke with. It is costing almost everybody in this nation. We are all run by emotions. We have to sympathize, with the bereaved families. Political parties have called off their campaign today. My flag bearer was there, Nana Adodankwe Akufo-Addo. He donated something to them. Dr. Mahmoud Baumia and our national chairman was there. Almost all the political parties have shown concern. And as a nation, once it has been able, this particular matter has been able to galvanize such gravity, and attention, we should use it as the focal point, with which we are going to use to revolutionize, this whole issue. Otherwise, this issue would not stop.
Do you have any faith? Do you have any faith that this incident will trigger some sort of a revolution in the way our city authorities do their job in maintaining and monitoring some of these buildings? You think this will change anything, or it will be one of those things that we'll talk about and forget?
No. I believe and I hope and I know that things will change.
Fortunately, you are in government, so we can hold you and say, tell us whether you think that this time, under your watch, this won't happen again.
The president was there. When the president got there, he said his focus from the beginning now is to make sure that anybody who is alive, trapped there, it's retrieved. Now, secondly, I think government they have been meeting to see how best they can help the families and the people who were part of this tragic thing happened to them. But he also made that he has caused an investigation to be put into this. Let's get to the logical conclusion. And any institution, any person, be it a member of NDC, NPP, anybody, I think we have come to a point where we need to crack the whip. Normally, look, one of the things I can tell you on authority is that go and speak to some of these metro works, the directors and the technicians there. The politicians are one of their major problems. Anybody comes, he says that, yes, I occupy this position. He knows that the land do not belong to him. He knows, but because of abuse of power, where they are, they want to build. They know it's a water course. They know it's a road demarcated. They will go and build. One of the things that would, I'm sure, would come out, you realize, is that people take a plan that I want to build a 4-room self-contained. That plan is approved, and they put up a different building.
But because nobody's monitoring.
Because nobody's monitoring. Because, and they even write on the building, stop work. But it has no meaning. It has no meaning.
Stop work by order.
By order. Produce your
permit. Going on.
Exactly.
Yes, you see, it's an issue.
Actually, I'm told that the people who construct the building themselves, they themselves write the stop work on their own building.
Yeah, it happens.
So when you build to a certain level, then you quickly find some red paint, write stop order by AMA. And when they are passing by, it has been written already, so they'll move on. And then you just continue your building. Exactly.
Yeah. But I know that in weakness, we find strength. It is not really the source of the power that has been. With this happening, I believe it is time to strengthen the institutions, the regulatory bodies. Because we don't have the culture of hire and fire, and we have our cultural underpinning when it happens. Look, Ghanaian society is one of the typical society that when somebody has had brush with the law, and the law is to take its own course, the rigors of the law, they tend to attract the sympathy of society. Sympathy comes and society starts to criticize people in leadership. Yes, he has done this. We are aware. He said he's okay. He's apologized. Why do you want the law to take its own course? That is one of the biggest problems we also have. With this coming up, you see, when building industry, construction industry is one of the places that we do not put premium or value on professionalism. How many people will go for structural engineers? This is a typical building that there should be a structural engineer. Most people will want to go for a mason. They will go for a draftman to draft something for them. They will never go to an architect to give them a plan, or a quantity surveyor who will tell you that this is the bill of quantity. This is the time that I think Ghana Institute of Surveyors, Ghana Institute of Engineers, they should wake up. They should stand up. It should not be that we draw, put it on the drawing board. This is the time they should back. They should say that, look, we need this to move.
I want to quickly move the conversation on, because to the slight politics surrounding it, all the parties called their campaigns, including Nanado also. He went there. I was wondering though, but he had no power to do anything about the situation. And some may suggest that this is an opportunity, like Hurricane Sandy in the USA, to try and make some political capital out of all this, to be seen as sympathizing as a terror. What do you say to those who suggest that?
I think that is laughable. I mean, you cannot belittle the issue to that extent. To the extent that we have lost human lives, Ghanaian lives, it is a sad news for anybody, okay? And if you are a responsible organization, you would find ways to reach out to the people who have been hard hit, people who have been bereaved, and people who are suffering as a result of this matter. So it is not an issue of somebody wanting to make any capital out of it, or a hurricane, Sandy situation here in Ghana. But if you look at the disposition of all the political parties, I am not sure that any political party is trying to capitalize on it to score any political point.
You can never tell.
Well, maybe you can never tell. But from the MPP's point of view, from the MPP's point of view, we are human-centered. We believe in Ghana, and therefore, when Ghana is struck by such a carnage, definitely it would affect our morale, our psyche and everything. So to that extent, we are showing genuine sympathies and condolences to the people who have been hard hit to this issue. My brother was talking about structural engineers being consulted to come in, before building and blah, 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 blah. He's a lawyer. He knows that it's inherent in our building permits.
They're the codes.
Our building codes. These are laws in this country, but they are not followed to the latter. How? Why? We can't just tell.
Let me ask you, must the AMA chief executive be fired? That's the last question I have before we move on to our next controversial topic. Must he be fired? Must he lose his job over this?
In other jurisdictions, probably his head will be on the beehive for chopping.
Well, tell me what you think categorically. Must he be fired? You've heard the back and forth, permit, no permit. He's spoken today that it didn't happen under his watch. So, well, you can't hold me responsible.
Evans,
must he be fired?
Evans, let's get to the bottom of the matter. If there's any amount of negligence, he should be fired. He has no responsibility. He has every single responsibility to make sure that the city is safe. Buildings, road, everything. So to the extent that there's such a serious carnage, then he should be fired. His head should be chopped off the job. Same question.
I think he himself has said that if he is found culpable, he would resign. That is, I think, is a firm principle and determined person who has made a principled stand that if I'm found culpable, when it comes to issues where people have to resign, I take the view always that if we always do any issue, anything that comes up, then we may be calling on anybody who either might be his fault or might not be his fault to resign his position. I don't think that is the way to travel.
It's a principle.
It's the principle of
ultimate responsibility.
Ultimate responsibility, absolute responsibility. I think, yes, I'll go for that principle. I'll go for that principle. But he has already come and said that if the investigation, it is found out that the people from my outfit were not up to the task, I would go.
Okay, thank you. We will return and then move on to our next controversial topic. I'm sure then there'll be fireworks because this one, they tend to agree on the issues because we are mourning. But we'll talk about the IEA vice presidential debate. A number of issues came up. One key one had to do with housing. And we had the back and forth. We are told that even the MPP distributed houses, one house to as many as 23 or so people. The matter is in court, and that's why the NDC government, they've not been able to, finish the affordable housing project that was started by the NPP. We'll look at the IEA vice presidential debate when we return from this break. Thank you very much for staying with us here on Joint Caucus. My name is Evans Mensah. With me, looking at the issues are Victor Kwejoga Adawuda, lawyer and member of the NDC communications team, also a member of the legal team of the NDC. Also with me is Salam Mustafa, MPP communications team member, and I'll start with him on this one. Your candidate was there, and many people say, well, he missed a big opportunity. The starting question was about economy, and he's been touted as that economic guru. His economic credentials have been upheld for a very long time as one of his unique selling propositions. Yet, some say he was beaten by his former boss.
I don't know, and I've not recalled anybody who had said so. I'm yet to hear anyone who categorically says that Vice President.
Victor, you say so?
Yes.
Okay, now you've heard it. He said so. Wow. You expand shit on that, but make the point.
I can't believe it. It was so much touted that, oh, the governor is coming against the deputy governor. He was so much talked about. When he was put to the test, he was a disaster.
Who?
And I'm sure
the
vice president was a disaster.
Why do you say so?
I'm sure you watched the program.
I did.
And within your own mindset, you would make a conclusion. And your conclusion is very, very valid to exactly what I am coming to say. The question on the economy and the answer that was given by Dr. Baumia was a blow to the vice president.
What did he say?
He starting with cedi depreciation. He mentioned categorically what the NPP was able to do, to arrest depreciation of the cedi, and how the cedi has been poorly managed under this current administration that is causing the severe depreciation. He talked about inflation, and he made mention. Managing inflation is to result into three things. Mm-hmm. Exchange rates, regime, mm-hmm. interest rates, and standard of living. But you realize that we have a falling interest rates that is being said to be single digit. Yet those other pointers are moving in some direction. It doesn't, follow the economic narrative. Mm. Because if you look at the economic narrative, it will tell you that when you have a falling inflation, probably a single digit inflation, there is correspondent following is falling interest rates, but that's not what we see in Ghana. Single digit inflation, the interest rates are going up, okay? Look at the depreciation of the cedi. Vice President Mr. Atta links it to election year.
But that's true.
That was most preposterous.
That's true.
That's not true.
Because in election year, we've seen that
2004,
the depreciation indeed happened.
If you don't manage your economic, fiscal policy well, they will fail. And that is the problem. Our economic, fiscal policies are badly managed. In 2004, the cedi depreciated by a marginal 2.2%. But today, this year, what has been the percentage, fall of the cedi? So it is not about election year. 2004 was an election year, but the cedi was well managed. When you have a disciplined fiscal policy management, you are able to control your economy in such a way that your indices are right. But immediately you do propaganda. Let me give you some interesting figures about inflation, okay? And watch the number 8. In 2010, September, the inflation rate was given as 9.38%. In October 2010, 9.38% again. November 2010, 9.08%. January 2010, 8.58%. January 2011, 9.08. Is that magic? That you have a constant 8 at the end?
What does that mean? I'm trying to get the mean what you want to say exactly.
How come you have the 8 following?
Yeah. So?
There's something wrong.
Because we have 8 running through the figures?
Is it magic?
I don't understand.
I'm lost. What I'm telling you is that if you look at the number 8,
sheer coincidence.
Sheer coincidence? Thank God.
Well, what is your explanation, though?
It's because there is a problem, and Dr. Baumia gave in his State of the Nation lecture, that if you do not calculate your inflation well, okay, the figure that you use to work certainly will be problematic. And exactly the figure as we see them. Because if your inflationary figure is wrong, it informs your policy decisions, i.e. interest rates. So you realize that the banks are not reducing interest rates, though we claim we have single digit. Because the banks themselves reckon with the fact that our inflationary rate is suspect.
Wrap up for me in 1 minute so I can give him 7 minutes as well.
So clearly, on the issue of economy, Dr. Baumia schooled Vice President Mr. Atta and showed him class. And if anybody who was there and watched the program realized that no, it is not about theory. The man knew what he was talking about. Indeed, after the debate, when Dr. Ton Edu was asked of his impression of the whole thing. He said Mr. Atta was a disaster. He's the vice president.
Where did you say that?
At the the program.
I see.
And he said Dr.
television,
Baumia,
on air.
Dr. Baumia, please let me make. Dr. Baumia was talking theory, but economics is based on theories. Demand and supply are theories. Okay, but we use them.
I don't
to
get
work.
it. You said just before now that Baumia was not doing theory; he was doing practical.
Yeah.
But you're saying now that
I said he showed that it's not just the practical, stuff, but he knew exactly what he was talking about.
okay. Let me bring in Mr. Dawood now. You heard him that your vice president, indeed your vice presidential candidate, and our vice president was flawed.
I beg to differ on that. This was an issue about the economy. We were looking at who has got the experience of managing the economy and at the same time having the theoretical base of economy. Right from PNDC time. This is a man who had been behind. From 83, he was the special assistant to the then Minister of Finance, Secretary for Finance, and became the deputy. During the first NDC, he was the deputy minister for a long time. Then he went into academia, he was lecturing, went back into consultancy, so he's got the practice of it, the practical aspect, and came back on as a governor. This is a man who has managed the economy. I'll just give you a very simple one. Recently, not too distant back, we saw how the cedi was depreciating. When we talk about managing the economy or the Bank of Ghana, there are two things normally they do. Is the monetary policy or the fiscal policy. These are the major things that in economy, in the Bank of Ghana, they do. When the dollarization was an issue, what was the fiscal policy was put in place to arrest the depreciation of the cedi? It was an issue that dollar will not be used or goods will not be priced. And that is a similar thing that was done in Zambia. So you realize that the demand for dollar has went down, has declined. You do every business within the cedi. That's where you see that the cedi is appreciating. It just go to tell you how the economy was managed by him as a governor.
Come back to the debate for me.
No. Yes, I'm coming back to the debate. The debate tells you the depth of knowledge that he's got from his practice as an economist and lecturing as a lecturer and being in consultancy. You would see that he broke everything down. This is a man who managed the economy for 15 months consecutive. We saw, you see, one thing.
He made a point, though, that has been criticized by some economists and experts, where he said, well, we should leave the figures to be decided by the technocrats and the professionals, and we shouldn't leave it to the market woman or so, or to the wife in the house. Some disagree with that, because if the people who feel the figures when they go to the market, they are those that are most important in the equation.
Yeah, they are most important. I think that, you see, if we look at it, the NPP had debated some of the figures that were being churned out by Ghana Statistical Services. And this was an issue that when the figures come, sometimes the correlation between the figures and what really reflects in your pocket, we have a dichotomy there. It does not always mean that when the interest rate is coming down or the economy is appreciating, the interest rate would definitely come down. You can ask any economist. No, but the understanding we have is that if you say the economy is doing well, the interest rates must come down. Really, everywhere you would see that normally they give you figures. The way they calculate, because when they say we should leave it for the technocrat, what is the basket? What and what is put in the basket to be calculated? I think that is what he was referring to. It's not that somebody comes and says that because the price of this good is gone up, that means the economy is becoming worse. I think that was exactly he was talking about, that the calculation of them. You know, there had been problem with the statistical service because they had to do a rebase. What do we put into the basket? What is the criteria? Those are the issues that he was referring, that let's give it to the technocrats to look at it. This is at the same institution that had done all the statistics. We get our official statistics. They have the custody of it.
Now, what is this thing he's talking about? Some people are confused.
Confused in the mind.
Yeah.
That goes to tell you, reinforce that, look, it is not about the textbook knowledge. You read and they tell you that if you put 1 + 1 is equal to 2 in the textbook. But when managing the economy, you need to always look at your monetary and fiscal policy. When do you pump in money, liquidity? Well, sometimes they deliberately pump in a lot of liquid. Some, they want to retrieve money so that it's balances. And you know, in economic, there might be a problem that you see the city is appreciating, but it comes to a convergence. It balances itself. So that is how you manage your fiscal policy. That's how it's done. So you see, a time comes, there's a lot of money in the system, time is being withdrawn. Then policy comes in. That is how it normally it is balanced. So that's the dichotomy. So it depends on when you are managing, you are on the job.
I see.
Yeah.
I want to bring in Mustafa now. You can choose to respond to some of the things you said.
Oh,
but also,
Salam.
But Mustafa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mustafa
okay.
Salam.
Oh, okay.
I want to bring him in. You can choose to respond to some of the things he said, but also add this to it. The question about housing was also a very controversial one. And the accusation against you was that your affordable housing project, you distributed to your cronies.
Yeah.
One house to some 23 people. How on earth did that happen?
That was a joke. That was a joke.
And we have some 5 minutes to wrap up, so
Yeah,
I'll
that
give you
was
2
a joke.
minutes to.
Yeah.
to
Let me quickly, tell my.
Let me say it's a joke. I think this is a platform we need to educate people. Let the facts and the figures speak to. You understand? Not to take what you're saying, but let's be what is a fact. The facts.
Quickly deal with it in 2 minutes for me.
So far, we haven't had any proof yet that a building has been allocated to 23 people. Never. It was just said, and that was it, and it has ended there. When I heard the Deputy Minister for Information being quizzed, and he couldn't give a concrete answer. That's why I said it was a joke, probably, just meant to create, laughter in the hall or something. But I'll come back to the housing policy. But in 2007, inflation came down to about 10% thereabout. Interest rates fell to 27%. In that year, banks were chasing people to give them loans. I don't know if you remember, in this country, it's your discipline in fiscal management. And interestingly, Dr. Baumia then was the deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana and headed the Monetary Policy Committee. This shows class. You bring Vice President Emisa Atta in as governor, he comes in, everything goes haywire. That is the distinction between the two. You are talking about he lecturing. I don't know which institutions he has
was
lectured.
in Anambra State in Nigeria. Anambra State College.
Dr. Baumia has not just lectured any university. He has lectured Harvard University. So there's a clear distinction between the two of them. Dr.
He was
Baumia
in Lagos.
shows
He was
class.
in Lagos. He was a lecturer in Lagos.
Harvard and Anambra.
Dr.
Anambra State
Baumia
University.
shows class. Okay. The housing.
Yeah. Now, are we looking at the name or the content? What is lectured? No. It's
Dr.
not-
I like
added-
this discussion.
Yeah.
But
He
I want
wrote
you to
a
wrap
book.
up for me because
He wrote a book.
I'm just
He
right
wrote
up,
a book, which
right
today
out of time
has
here.
become a referral point, even to Bank of Ghana, as we sit today, and other African countries, including Zambia. Okay, he was sent to Zimbabwe. He went. That country had inflation over 120,000 percent. But today, look at how Zimbabwe is growing out of the mess. So between the two, when you're talking theory, he knows it. When you're talking, practicals, he knows it and he has it. He managed this country for 8 years, and Ghana, became a beacon of hope that was a shining star.
So for
in
you,
Africa.
Baumia won the night.
Baumia showed class.
Okay.
He tops.
He
And
showed
NBC
class, but he didn't win.
He did.
I asked you that question, you chose to say he showed class.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to show you that he won. When I say he showed class, he won.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring you Dawodu now. Yes, you respond to the things he said for me. And what was he talking about when he says, I haven't been to the court before, so I can answer the question? Do you remember that one? They asked him a question about the ports. Port management, managing the ports.
Yeah.
And then when they asked him the question, and then he says, I'm sorry, I haven't been to the courts.
Yeah, I think there was an issue.
That was just by the way, but respond to the main.
Yeah, let me respond to them.
He was mindless. He was not in the debate. He was not in the room.
When it comes to the issue about the 23 houses, look, go to the transitional committee report, right? It could be they use the address that some people used for the allocation. Maybe it comes to one person, let's say Honorable Stephen Asamoah Boateng. If he uses an address, the wife, Zuleika, uses the same address, Victoria Boateng also uses the same address. That might be one of the things that they will be saying 23 people had one location. But you see, when it comes to affordable houses, what was the objective? It was to go for the middle and junior rank public servant.
And that didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It was distributed. It is there. It's a fact.
But you have said
Goes
that.
to-
No, but wait.
Just to balance it. I had Abubakar Sadiq
before.
on the CTFM today. Admitting that they gave some
gave
MPP
out
500 and MPP people.
Office of
and
the
they gave
President had
200 to the
51.
police.
That does not stop the NDC from completing.
I want to wrap up on this.
It is a spiteful attitude.
I'm told we have to cross over to that for the news at 8 now. So I want to say thank you very much, gentlemen. Of course, we
I
just
think
run out
this
of time.
house and we need to debate it.
I know it's a pretty controversial area, but I'm grateful for your time, Victor Kwejoga Dawodu, lawyer and member of the NDC communications team, and also a member of the legal team of the NDC. Also, Salam Mustafa, NPP communications team member. I'm grateful for your time for joining us here on set from your homes. My name is Evans Mensah. We'll come again next week, Friday, with another edition. Maybe we can look at the housing sector a bit more closely. Up next is Joe News at 8.